Welcome to this interactive webinar of NGIZ Club Clingendael, this time in English. You can ask questions both in Dutch as well as in English. We're very thankful that you're here today. We have two special guests because the main question of today is how do the Polish see and perceive the European Union, sometimes referred to as Europe or Union. We will start with the postponed elections because that's very recent, and the current situation in Poland, and we'll move towards the role of Poland, the role what Poland is playing in Brussels, and the direction they want to go to. But most of all, we follow the line you draw because you can ask questions in the chat box at the side of your screen, right next to this video. My name is Jos Hummelen, and I'm the chair of NGIZ Club Clingendael. We are completely run by volunteers, so leave a comment for them on Facebook if you like this video. My special thanks goes out to Marcel Wolters, our technician. Thank you so much for arranging this all again, because this is, I think, the 8th webinar we do. And if something breaks down, we know where to find you and who to blame. No, I'm just kidding. Our last webinar was about Germany, and you can still find that on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe on our channel and don't miss out on anything. Our next webinar will be in Dutch with Tim de Wit and Rem Korteweg, and will be about the way Boris Johnson uses science to make his decisions. So the title is Boris Johnson versus Science. Because he receives a lot of critique and tends to hide behind scientists, I would like to find out what's going on and if that's going to backfire. And you can ask all the questions you want in the chat box. That webinar is going to be on the 18th of June. Later we have a webinar called China's Great Firewall. So again, make sure to follow us on YouTube or Facebook. Don't miss out. But first, our theme today, we're going to talk about Poland. You can ask what you wanted to ask to our guests. They will be introduced shortly by Jelle Bakker of NGIZ Club Clingendael. So take the floor, Jelle.
Yes, thank you, Jos. It's my great privilege today to welcome and to introduce our guests. First, a very warm welcome to His Excellency, Mr. Dr. Marcin Piotr Czepelak. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. He is the Polish ambassador to the Netherlands since 2017. He's also a jurist from his background. He specialized in international civil procedure, protection of foreign investment, and the law of treaties. And his role in the Netherlands is very important, certainly in times where it might be challenging the nationalism in Poland and rising populism and some of the quarrels with the EU, and I'm sure that we'll address them today. So a very warm welcome to you. And also to our second guest, Geert Jan Hahn. Maybe some of the people who follow our webinars know him already, because he was also in a session about Hungary. After graduating cum laude in Slavic languages, literatures and linguistics at the University of Amsterdam, Geert Jan Hahn became a journalist. And he specialized in political conditions in Central and Eastern Europe. He works at the BNR, and he's also a correspondent. And his contribution today will be very much appreciated, since he always has very original views and ideas, and he might mix in the Polish viewpoint and the Dutch viewpoint. So also a very warm welcome to you. And now I'll briefly sketch the scenario in which we might start. So as Jos already said, we're going to start about the postponed election days. They were supposed to be held on the 10th of May, but they were postponed at the last minute because 4 days in advance, actually nobody knew what was going to happen. But now they are scheduled on June the 28th because of the coronavirus, of course. there are some political experts who call the chosen procedure of postponing a democratic mess. And we have to say it was not the first in a series of questionable moves by the leading Law and Justice Party. But I'm sure we'll get to that as well. For the people who don't know, Poland joined the EU in 2004 and is one of the most promising and economically stable new member states. They are certainly the most prosperous former Soviet countries. With the help of the EU funding, they invested a lot in infrastructure, society, economy, and actually the Polish population is very much in favor of membership of the EU. During a questionnaire, 84% of the population said they were in favor of their membership. But on the other side, Polish society is also very conservative, and there are some problems in the social and the societal area. We could say that maybe Poland, together with Hungary, are the most conservative and also nationalist members of the EU, which is also demonstrated by, for example, a huge march of white supremacist and nationalist groups on the National Independence Day in 2017. Also, the leading PIS, so the Law and Justice Party, spoke out against gay rights. So there are some things happening that are in direct contradiction to the EU policy and its laws. Also, some political moves of the PIS party, for example, replacing some judges or fining some of the critical media in the country, which can be seen as like openly rebelling against European Union laws. And as a reaction, the European Union issued several warnings, but they were ignored. So they initiated Article 7.1 for the first time in the EU's existence, which could, if adapted or voted for, could strip Poland of their voting rights. Actually, it wouldn't work because like there's one country in the EU that is protecting Poland, and that is another country with a president with some authoritarian tendencies, namely Hungary. So as a result, Poland still receives funding by the EU, while at the same time ignoring some of its ground laws, and that sort of makes it questionable whether the EU has enough enforcement measures to ensure that its laws are adhered to. And yeah, I think that that's a good way to start this webinar, since I draw some of the friction that's currently exists. So I'll give the floor to the speakers.
Thank you so much, Jelle, about this short introduction, which is of course not necessarily completely neutral, but then we know where we're going to talk about. So that's great. Mr. Ambassador is already laughing a little bit, so that's very positive, I think. Because let's start off. For everyone who missed the beginning, thanks for tuning in a little bit later. I hope you're sitting straight up in your chair with a block note in front of you, because and your fingers, of course, on the keyboard, because you can ask two experts on this topic everything you want. First question, Mr. Czepelak. This morning, I'm guessing you had a media a briefing about Dutch media and also Polish media. What's in the newspaper now? What is actionable? Because it has been, and it's still, a quite hectic situation now in Poland. Can you describe the current situation with the postponed election in Corona times?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation to this program. welcome in my home, and it's nice to be a guest in your home or in your homes. In fact, well, shall I start? I mean, the introduction was, let's say, far from being neutral. I understand that in due time I will have chance to respond, but I think the gist of your doubts and worries is indeed election. Now the president of the lower chamber of the Polish parliament, called Sejm, rescheduled the election day, which will be then 28th of June. Now the National Electoral Commission will meet necessary preparation to prepare it. What will be new? We will have parallel possibilities to vote either personally, coming to the poll, and to do it in the way called distance voting or correspondence voting. If you would like me to elaborate more how it happened, how it came that the re-election has been rescheduled, I can do it. But probably what I shall indicate as the last part of my intervention is that the coronavirus has a huge impact on every dimension of our life.
Yes.
Also on organization of the election, and somehow we learn how to do it. And it's learning by doing, as it is in this case. So thank you for the time being.
Yeah, thanks. I really like this form of doing a webinar, because then you can see somebody and somebody says exactly what he or she wants to say. So feel free to have your perspective next to the perspective that was there in the introduction. Geert Jan.
Yes, I'm here.
I think it's beautiful what you did just there, because a little bit later than 8 o'clock we couldn't hear you, but you are here. So right on time management. Thanks.
It's magic.
It's great to have you. The recent events in Poland, what do you make of it? What is important to remember of the postponed elections?
Well, it's a roller coaster with ups and downs. Like the Mr. Ambassador is saying, Poles will go to the polls on June 28th. Presidential election was delayed by coronavirus, by COVID-19, but that's the short version, of course. Because, well, if I say roller coaster, it means it's a very complicated story. A timeline full of loops. Maybe I can explain a little bit to the viewers about current coalition, because of course it's about choosing a new president. Mr. Duda is the current president of Poland, but his term expires in August, so there should be a new one, or the same one, but then with a new mandate, of course. In Parliament, in coalition, there are two parties right now. The Law and Justice Party, better known as PiS, and the Agreement Party, better known as Porozumienie. Actually, there's one more, Solidarna Polska, but that's kind of intertwined with the Law and Justice Party. But okay, we get into detail now. The Law and Justice Party, together with Porozumienie, decided to have an agreement on postponing the elections. Actually, I have to say, the elections officially did go on the 10th of May. Voter turnout, 0%. Because it was not officially cancelled, it was postponed. Nevertheless, two party leaders of the two parties in parliament. After a lot of quarreling, a lot of discussion, on one hand it was a democratic mess. On the other hand, it was a democratic way because legislation discussion all went through Parliament, through Sejm, the lower house, through Senate. Discussions between the party leaders, Mr. Kaczynski and Mr. Gowin. And in the end, this is the result, a postponement of the elections, 28th of June, and it should be a healthy situation, hopefully then. It will still be a postal election, so with mail, but also the possibility to go actually physically to the ballot box. So you could say, I don't know if Mr. Ambassador knows the Dutch word polderen, but this was quite a polder agreement, actually. And I think that's a short.
Do you agree, Mr. Ambassador?
Well, today I was thinking about the situation, how it explained, let's say, in Dutch categories, and I was thinking about a polder model, and then I thought, if I come to Poland and explain that, we have polder model, nobody would understand it. But I think you made the right point.
Geert Jan, can I ask, was this roller coaster you just described with the ups and downs, was this due to the coronavirus or a power struggle?
Several things. A power struggle within the coalition, because Mr. Gowin of the junior coalition party. I'm sorry, I'm getting a call. I'm pushing it away now. Yeah, it's live, guys. This is what happened. I think it's several things. First and foremost, coronavirus, because otherwise there would be elections, right? Secondly, struggles in coalition, especially I would say with Mr. Gowin resigning as Deputy Prime Minister in April, because he didn't feel it would be right to hold the elections on May of 10th, which were originally scheduled for. I mean, if you would go behind the scenes, Mr. Gowin and Mr. Kaczynski, of course, they had worked about the situation. This is some kind of polder model. What also is currently happening is a strong role of opposition. The opposition parties, they also were rejecting the idea of holding elections in a time of coronavirus. But also on their side, it had a political component. If I have to say, and maybe it's not the most popular view in the West, but opposition parties, especially the Civic Party, PO, better known maybe in the Netherlands as the party, the former party of Donald Tusk, who's the former prime minister. Since Donald Tusk, this party did not have a very strong candidate who was able to mobilize enough Polish electorate. And also the candidate they, had until recently was not very strong. So of course it was also in their, how to put it, it was kind of their wish, of course, in political ways as well, to postpone the election. But of course, if you would ask me, I think it's the right decision to postpone the elections due to health issues. Although it would be a postal vote, I still think that also when you look at the way how democratic elections are held, you need a good and fair campaign. And Mr. Duda, like Mr. Rutte in our country, had a lot of PR, had gained momentum because of coronavirus, and you need strong leadership. But it also puts everything in perspective, right? And you're in a huge crisis. You're in a pandemic. We never experienced that in our lives. So I think for a fair, healthy, equal campaign, it's good that it's postponed. So media can pay the right amount of attention to all the parties, to all the plans of the candidates, and there are a lot of presidential candidates, because there is actually probably a new one for the Civic Party now, the mayor of Warsaw, who tries to collect a lot of signatures to get officially nominated. So yeah, all those things, they play a role all together. It's a roller coaster. Quick recap.
Quick response.
Well, if I shall be very concise, I can only congratulate Geert Jan Hahn, his good orientation in Polish politics. I can explain some more, if you wish, how difficult it was to legally challenge this problem of elections, and yeah, perhaps if you allow me, but if not, I will just make two general remarks. One is the importance of
about that. It would be nice, so we
Sorry?
can keep the tempo a little bit. Please do so. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, perhaps two general remarks. The president in Poland should guarantee the continuity of the state authority. So he has some prerogatives of the Dutch prime minister, but you can compare it to the king. You should always have a king, and if possible, this period of interregnum should be as short as possible. So it is indeed important to have new president elected before the term of incumbent expires, which puts a lot of pressure into the political system. And second thing, it is in order to organize election process, which is crucial for functioning of democracy, you need a kind of formal agreement of all stakeholders. How shall we proceed? And I think we are in this moment when in this Polder model, we agreed what is the way forward, which I think is very optimistic.
But the way it went, was that democratic? Was that necessary?
Well, the Constitution says, roughly speaking, that the election should be organized no sooner than 100 and no later than 75 days before the term of incumbent expires. And you cannot postpone it as such. I mean, the Constitution gives you ground for it, which is martial law, state of emergency, or state of natural disaster. Martial law, somehow, I mean, hopefully it's not in the case. So there was, at some stage of pandemia, the opinion was expressed, okay, we should introduce the state of national disaster, which have following constitutional consequences. There is no possibility to organize elections. The term of the president will be longer, and we will wait 90 days until the state is declared. But basically, what are the problems? You declared state of natural disaster for 30 days. It is rather connected to the fact that you have some damaging event and you need to cope with consequences. Whilst with pandemia, it was at the very beginning and nobody was able to foresee what will be time-wise the impediment for the elections. And at the same time, we have a special law of 2008 law, which is introduces measures counter contagious diseases, which gives government power to introduce some anti-pandemic measure in the interest of public health. So the government reacted, let's say, as a good policeman should do. So you don't use firearms if you can use the handcuffs. If you can only raise your voice, you don't use any kind of force. So rather limit your intervention into the sphere of civic rights. But then, what to do with elections? So the proposal was tabled to organize it in a way which is safe, which is distance voting. But then it was a dispute. Okay, can we do it? Isn't it too late to make changes?
Yeah, but the way you explain it to me now it sounds very like a practical discussion. But was it only practical, Geert Jan, or was it more than just what to do in time of Corona crisis when we should hold an election?
Well, I think my interlocutor will confirm that Polish politics it's highly polarized. It's highly polarized. So even if you discuss it, you always have very strong views, express opinions, and counter proposals. So which was, I think, it has been mentioned that a kind of middle ground what was proposed to postpone the election, but for the sake of continuity, to prolong the term of incumbent president 2 years, but depriving him of the possibility to be re-elected. But this in turn would mean that there should be a kind of agreement to change the constitution, which has not been achieved, and and the 10 May arrived. Due day was there, and the only possible thing was then to declare it's impossible to organize. Somehow we return, like in the Tale of Hobbit, here and back again. Just the Hobbit is different, and here we are now with agreed way how to proceed. So it is possible to vote by correspondence. It is possible to go to the poll personally, and the date is June 28th.
Geert Jan, a quick question, a practical question. Sometimes there's a sound without you saying anything, so it sounds a little bit electric. Maybe you can look into that later on. But first, do you think that was this the idea of holding an election amidst the coronavirus was a gamble to gain more power and a gamble that the ruling party lost, or is that a negative question from my part?
It's a Western European question, I would say. It's also a question from someone who probably has a lot of trust and faith in democratic institutions. One could say that the victory of President Duda to get a new term, that it's pivotal for peace. And peace, I mean the Law and Justice Party. Because if you want to govern effectively with an opposition president, that would not really work for your plans. And
so they need some extra time in order to.
Well, I mean, it's like every government, every coalition who wants to achieve things. You look at key positions, right? And Mr. Duda, I mean, he is an independent president, but I have to say, and Mr. Ambassador knows that as well, that when Mr. Duda was president-elect, he resigned from his peace membership. He is a staunch ally of peace. There is a connection. And that's also difficult because it makes the president and the system, the way it works, so the strong connection between the government and the president, it makes them an easy target for people who disagree with their policy. People from the West, people from the opposition parties like the Civic Party, and sometimes they do have a point. We come to talk later on about legal issues, and I do think that the way legislation and politics are divided in Poland currently are not the way it should be. not the way I'm used to. But we come to talk that later on.
But it doesn't matter where you used to. It does matter where Poland signed for when they entered the European Union, and there is some widespread concern about the legal system and what happened to that in recent years. Can you explain and elaborate a little bit, Geert Jan?
Well,
yeah, maybe Mr. Ambassador first.
well, but before we, I think, close this electoral chapter, I think three short remarks. Well, first of all, at least from my memory, all presidents in Poland had political affiliations. They resigned from the membership of the party at the moment they were assuming the office. But it is how the system functions. So mainly we have a candidate supported by political parties. Secondly, indeed, we have a government composed by coalition with the majority in the lower chamber, but not having majority in the upper chamber, Senate. Sounds familiar, probably. Sounds familiar. So it's Dutch. But third, this system, as it has been explained by my predecessor, can lead or can result in twofold situations. One is you have a president and a government stemming from or coming from the same political environment, and what you call cohabitation or cohabitation. You have a president who is affiliated or who is linked to the other political option than that one which is currently governing. So, but somehow it's a beauty and curse of this system. You can have both, and we had them. So I would say it's nothing original in it, per se, at least.
Geert Jan, I asked you the question about the legal system and what the European Union in Brussels expect of it. Can you tell what's going on and where the concerns lie? Because Jelle in his introduction said something about invoking Article 7. Why?
Yeah. Yeah, well, first of all, I'm not a legal expert. I think the Mr. Ambassador studied law, so he probably knows a little bit more about specific rules of legislation. Maybe I can share with you my point of view, looking from a more political perspective, but also maybe from society. Although you could say that the current Polish coalition is a Eurosceptic one, Warsaw is, in my opinion, not aiming for what we call a pole exit, like a Brexit. I don't think Warsaw needs a pole exit. Same goes for Budapest. Hungary and Poland, they might have different ideas about the development of the European Union as an organ compared to our country. Different ideas about certain values. And experts say that current government, and especially Peace Party, because it's a peace-dominated coalition, that peace is allegedly undermining democracy and the rule of law in its approach to judiciary, media, public appointments, civic rights. Brussels, they agree with those experts. The European Network of Councils for the Judiciary proposed to expel Poland, already suspended, because its judicial council, and now I have to quote, is in blatant violation of the rule of this network to safeguard the independence of the judiciary and undermines the application of EU law. End of quotation. But it takes two to tango. Poland is questioning Brussels' legal system as well. And the latest decision by the Dutch court, no, the German constitutional court, I think in Karlsruhe, made it quite easy, to put it this way, for Warsaw and Budapest to attack on European law as well. So let me put it this way. Look at this Polish government as a kid. Look at Brussels as its dad. Look at the Polish people as Brussels' grandchildren and Polish children. So one big family, but not always happy. And the Polish government, so the kid does not agree with the rules of, in this way, dad, mom and dad. And the grandchildren, they are divided as well, because although most of the grandchildren, most of the Polish people, they want to stay in the European family. They don't want to get out. It would not be a popular scenario, and Mr. Kaczynski, party leader of PiS, knows this. And although PiS, PiS has a policy full of spending on socio-economic issues. On the other hand, they do appreciate the European funds. They do get the pocket money that a kid would get from his dad as well. So this family allegory, it really, I was thinking about this because this boy, Poland, still wants to get the pocket money, still wants to choose his own bedtime, still wants to play video games, despite the fact that Frans Timmermans did recommend the boy to buy a good book, preferably 7 books in 7 different languages, because that's what Timmermans would recommend.
This webinar is first and foremost to get to understand the Polish perspective. What is the Polish perspective on this view?
It is the Polish perspective, Jos. It is division.
So, do the Polish people see themselves as a boy and Brussels as mom and dad?
I assume that it's question to me,
yes.
or
to you, Mr. Ambassador.
Well, I mean, on the one hand, I have full sympathy for this comparison as a father of a little boy who is challenging constantly.
Yeah. We can expect him any minute to run into the room.
I hope not any. No, but on the other hand, well, it's so paternalistic. It's so damn paternalistic. We are not a boy. We don't need a mother. And I don't think the European Union is about paternalizing people. I mean, it was not my perception. I hope none of us here has it. Okay. Even as one. Because let's say it is our, if I may use, joint project. We share the ownership as we share responsibility. Well, it also means that we would like to have our, how to put it, our own ideas, how to make things better, or where we are going to.
What is
we want also to determine the direction of development. And I don't think it's right, and it's very, very, I think, wrong to put the perspective. We take pocket money. Well, okay, I would say we contribute to the same budget. We put to disposal of other member states our market. We put we respect freedoms, and in terms of EU law, basically there is no opposition between EU law and Polish law. I mean, they as in matters of every legal system, there will be, how to say, spheres where they will interfere, and you need to, how to put it, rectify things up, clear things up. But if you are a lawyer, you just take it as it is. I mean, it happens. And I don't want to discuss perhaps the judgment, the ruling of the German Constitutional Court, but it shows one issue. I mean, you need to determine to what extent national constitutional courts can adjudicate, to what extent the Court of Justice of the European Union can adjudicate, how to make it harmonize, and it's not easy, and won't be easy. But as how you put it, we are family, and we need to go further, and we will.
How this is rather how you don't see the European Union, but how do you see the European Union as a joint project, as a family? Can you elaborate a little bit more? What is the direction? What is the right direction in the minds of the Polish people?
Well, project it's a nice word, but probably it's not substantial in a way that it gives you the meat of the answer. But let's say there are various components. From my perspective, as a man in his 40s, Europe and European Union was a kind of personification of our aspirations. And I think it's worth of noting it. 31 years ago, on 4th June 1989, after agreement between Communist Party and the part of opposition, there were first elections, still not free, but the elections which were first step to democracy. So from the very beginning, from the outset of our regaining our independence, our sovereignty, we were aiming at European Union, membership in EU. At this time, it was still a European Economic Organization, and NATO, and we managed to do it. Now, let's say we are in the same boat. We just need to agree how to do it. What I think is important,
we're in the boat.
What is very important,
what is the
direction?
Well,
sometimes we say some people say we should go like United States of America be United States of Europe.
What do you say?
Well, we say it's currently impossible because United States of America was created by the nation.
Okay, that's not the direction.
We don't have a European nation. We have diversity of cultures. We have diversity of languages, which is our beauty. And we want to, we want to stick to the rule of complementarity. And I think this is what we share with Dutch. We think, let's look what we can do better together, and the rest, let's leave it up to the states.
So, what is the first thing that we can do better as a family in the same boat?
I think we should continue our talks on a multi-annual financial framework. We should discuss what to do in terms of how to respond to the crisis, to the economic crisis resulting from pandemia. We should look what shall we do towards challenges we all have. Otherwise, we will be, to quote one of my German friends, we will be only a nice museum with a lot of cultural achievements, but not competitive, not strong enough. So if we want to mean something, we need to work on it.
Yeah, Geert Jan wants to interrupt, and then we go to the questions of the viewers, because there's a lot, and we didn't discuss enough of that. Maybe if you both agree, we'll be having this webinar a little bit longer than 9 o'clock. Is that okay for you both? but we'll see. Geert Jan, you first.
Wszystko w porządku.
What is that?
I understand. Everything is all right.
Okay.
Excellent Polish. I mean, I'm surprised.
Me, not so much. But Geert Jan, you wanted to interrupt.
Yes, I have one question for the ambassador. Because Jos, you were asking Mr. Ambassador about the projects we could work on together. I was saying that this European Network of Councils for the Judiciary proposed to expel Poland because, in their opinion, Poland is undermining the judiciary and the application of EU law. But what I hear the ambassador saying, because he is not mentioning this as maybe a European project, are you actually happy with that, with getting expelled?
Well, I think no one would be happy in case when you have such a conflicting views. That's for sure. Is it the right thing? But this process, I mean, the discussion about it, it has some how to put it, some legal component and some political component. I think, I mean, just to give you general response, I think if there is a legal dispute, it should be resolved on a legal way. So politicizing it doesn't make it better. Frankly speaking, this is, let's say, the gist of the position of the Polish government. If there is a legal dispute, should be resolved on the legal in the form of legal proceedings, not politicized.
All right. I think that's very clear. Thank you. Let's go to some of the questions that are here in my syncing screen. Syncing, please wait. The first one is to what extent would the Polish view and the view of the European Union, is that even compatible in the long term? What do you think, Geert Jan? Or will they drift apart?
No, I think it's compatible because, well, I didn't ask the ambassador for his opinion about this, but in my opinion, like I said, a Pole exit is out of the question. I mean,
that is something else. That is the opinion of the people about how it functions for them. But the directions sometimes, in my view, it looks like they're drifting apart from each other because they want something else with the European Union.
I think it's.
I mean, the question is, if you look at European politics, I mean, you are always in the presence of diverging views. I mean, we shall have already been accustomed to it. That's one thing, and perhaps it will ease the rest of your interrogation. I mean, before this program, I was thinking how to explain whether, I mean, if I got short question, are Polish and Dutch similar or not? My question would be, we are different, but very compatible. And this is the beauty of European Union. We are very different, but we are compatible.
I'll go to the next question because I like the speed of that answer as well. Although the beginning of the webinar and the webinar so far is very interesting. Thank you so much. Christian de Vries, what is the Polish input going to be for the conference on the future of Europe? And what would Poland be open to charging the treaties if needed? Mr. Ambassador.
Well, I think it's very important to look into the future of Europe and how to put it. Perhaps I will start what is different. Perhaps Poland is supporting the enlargement of Europe. We think we should slowly but surely propose European perspective to the countries which are our southern neighbors, and that's one thing. Second thing, we think we should increase, and this is what we share with that digital agenda. We should still work on full freedom of services, because if you compare it to other three freedoms, it is one which has not been developed comparatively. So if you remember your former Prime Minister Bolkestein, we would rather go into that direction. Perhaps for the time being, it's enough.
All right. Thank you. The next question is from HHL95. Which form of cooperation is prioritized by Poland, the European Union or the Visegrad Group? The question is for you, Mr. Czepelak.
Well, what would Netherlands prefer? Benelux cooperation of European Union? It's neither nor. It's one and the another. So, you know.
So what you're saying is the same direction.
Sorry?
What you're saying is the Visegrad Group and the European Union could go in the same direction, and then Poland is with both or with neither.
Well, I mean, first of all, these platforms of cooperation are legally and politically incomparable. I would say Visegrad Group, it's quite important within the European Union. But I mean, there is no contradiction, as there is no contradiction in being a member of a Benelux Union and a member of the European Union. By the way, we also meet in these two formats together, so Benelux plus Visegrad countries. Quite simple. I mean, if you want to elaborate, you can discuss issue because states form coalition around some European projects, like you have now very frugal four, for example. Because there are four which you have the New Hanseatic League, for example. I mean, it's quite normal that there will be a kind of regional, but if I'm not wrong, and if you compare it by process of directive regulations, the geographic criteria does not play such important role as we would think about it at the very beginning. But there is no contradiction in being at the same time member of Benelux and in European Union or Visegrad before.
Can I make a quick remark, Jos?
Yes, you may.
The Benelux countries, they were, together with three other countries, the founders of the European Union, the EEG. The Visegrad countries, they came later on. And I think what's very important for the Visegrad countries is that they get their points, their shared points sometimes, right on the agenda of Brussels. So it's kind of old politics and new politics, and sometimes it looks like if Warsaw and Budapest and Czech and Slovakia, and sometimes in combination with the Baltic area, if they already are able to mention some very important topics to them, which might be less important for Western European countries, it gives them a stronger position already to put that on the Brussels agenda. And I think, therefore, this kind of cooperation can be very important and compatible as well.
Do you share that view, Mr. Czepelak?
Well, I mean, what is European politics about? Indeed, it is about having allies supporting or centering around the common position on issues. I mean, that's about politics. You how to say, you adapt yourself to the expectation, and you look for partners who share your expectations or share your concerns.
Yes.
I mean, that's what is Brussels about, and I think it's totally understandable. So I mean, if you want to say me that we are no in that context, not better than other European countries, probably you got me. We are exactly as I don't know, Netherlands, Belgium, Germany, or Spain.
Yes, but sometimes the policies are rather different than most of the countries. For example, with the new Green Deal, what about it? Are the Polish going to choose for Russian gas and Polish coal, or are they going to go green as von der Leyen proposed?
Well, I think we have already proven that we aim at green. Look at the fact that we were hosting in Katowice the last climate summit. Look at the fact that we are trying to reform our our energetic sector. The problem is, however, we inherited after communist times a coal industry, and surprisingly, in other countries in which were under Soviet rule, there were nuclear power plants, but not in Poland for some reason. And now there is a question how to make this transition. So to cut long story short, we would like to make this transition fair. We endorse the idea of special fund which make this transition a fair and just process. And we want to have, to take into account that we are aiming at the same goal. It's just we started from the very different point in which, like, you cannot compare it to the Netherlands. But what we are doing, for example, we are even changing the plans. So when we planned to build a new coal power plant, I mean, it's impossible to replace it by wind at this place. But we can transform it into gas, which is more green than coal. So step by step, we will exactly do. But
is there time to do it step by step?
Well, I mean, if you want if you want to take this process seriously, you need to have a kind of business plan, how to do it. And by the way, at some stage, I think it will be necessary, and it is highly politically sensitive, to also ask a question about nuclear energy. I mean, whether it's possible, whether it's feasible to achieve security in energetic sector, having or not having nuclear power plants in Poland.
But that's not necessarily the topic today, but it's a great one for later maybe. I have a question from Henrik Boeyer, and we're drifting from Polish internal politics towards Poland versus or with or in the EU, and now let's end up with Poland and the Netherlands. The question is, aside from the fact that we all hate Frans Timmermans, what does Holland and Poland have in common? In what ways can both countries prosper together? Maybe it's nice to ask that firstly to Geert Jan.
I don't think we all have in common that we hate Frans Timmermans.
Of course we don't, no.
He's a great polyglot, and I think it would be very wrong to hate people, because from that perspective, dialogue is not possible.
I think there's a big link there.
Timmermans, he points out things that are less popular sometimes in some places. But yeah, that's politics, right? And what can we learn from each other? I think that Poland and the Netherlands have a very good, strong connection, that we all feel very European. We also have a nationalistic feeling. Maybe Polish people a little bit more than Dutch people. But sometimes I'm a bit jealous of them as well, because
No, Mr. Czepelak highly disagrees.
Well,
No.
would you like to continue?
Mr. Czepelak, tell me, what is so funny about the Polish being more nationalistic than the Dutch, or maybe a little bit? Is that something that's hunting you? That you?
No,
always...
I mean, I was laughing that because we were almost, or we were about to start the competition. Who is more? Well, first of all, I personally do not like. What I hate is labeling people, and I think that because of my staying here in the Netherlands, I understood this expression, koopman en dominee. Mm-hmm. So in this light, I also can better understand Frans Timmermans, and I think during his last intervention in Nieuwsuur, when he rightly indicated some issues to which I would subscribe, like, he said something like that. We've got COVID, we've got problem with pandemia, but we already had the problem with internal market. We get problems with structures, and what he pointed was absolutely right. That we focus. It's natural that we are focusing on COVID, but we had a lot of many problems which will not disappear because we have this bigger problem.
From Timmermans, but that was not the reason you were laughing. You were laughing about the nationalistic claim.
Well, because it's like and maybe now I can go back to introduction. If you with one breath you say nationalism and conservatism, for example, I mean, with due respect, a conservative, it's far from being nationalistic, and the nationalistic, it's also something which, I mean, what do you actually mean? Because then we will probably end up in making distinction between patriotism, respect for yourself, respect for identity, and I mean, probably if you say nationalistic, you mean chauvinistic. So in a way, you say whatever I represent, it's better because it's me, or you also how to say, you linked nationalism with the hatred and despise to other nations. I mean, there cannot be an agreement on such a thing. But on the other hand, if I see Dutch being proud of their achievements, about their culture, about, I don't know, smart things they developed, I mean, what's wrong with that? And what's wrong if Germans or I don't know, Norwegians do it?
Of course, yes. We had our introduction.
I was about to say something else, actually.
Okay, so please explain. Perhaps I got it wrong.
Maybe you were right, and that I could have used the word chauvinistic instead of nationalistic. But it's more a semantic discussion. What I tried to say was, your country fought against Nazism, against communism. You were wiped off the map of Europe for 120 years, but still trying to maintain your language, your culture, your knowledge, your values, even though it was underground. And sometimes, even though I feel European, and I think that the Netherlands and also Poland, they're part of the European Union, we're members, we're in this together. Sometimes I wish that I would feel a little bit more of the proud that the Polish people feel about their own country. That's what I sometimes really appreciate about Polish people, and what maybe we can learn, because, you know, when we're Dutch, sometimes we're not proud of our country, sometimes we are, sometimes we're arrogant, sometimes we don't want to get money to Italy, but we do want to get money from Germany. Sometimes I'm proud of Polish people because they know what they want. That was what I was about to say.
The introduction is
Well, thank you. I mean, it's great to hear such a compliment.
There we go.
It's great to hear such a compliment. I can only add to it. Can I continue?
I wanted to say that
I could only add that
this is so typical for a webinar that people cross each other. So one second. I wanted to say that the introduction was colored in, because if you keep it as neutral as it is, people and we try to, of course, have a reaction on things that people are thinking or guessing or thinking they know that. So it's very good to hear your perspective about it. Some last questions?
Well, if I may jump in, I mean, it's, I always appreciate if the perspective is balanced, and if I could somehow self-explain why Polish are as they are, it is, you know, sometimes you are made to pay the price for things you have or you would like to have. That's the example of with freedom, and it's not without reason why in Breda you have Polish graves, or you have them in close to Arnhem, because we took part in Market Garden. We took part in the liberation of your country with one division and one brigade. I mean, it's a kind of, I don't know, God's playground that Polish soldiers were here. But if you really believe in the values you acknowledge, you are ready to, you know, to make your course everywhere, even in the Netherlands.
Yeah, let's run this up. Let's just come together to the last question and the main question we have. What is the Polish perspective on the EU? Can you give that in one sentence? Try it, Geert Jan.
Oh, Jos, one sentence.
Maybe for you.
What's the Polish perspective in the EU?
Or some key words.
There's always a future if you keep the dialogue alive, if you respect each other, and also respect each other's values. So what I think that Poland could do better and learn from some other European countries is universal human rights, freedom of press. Those concerns raised by Frans Timmermans, I have to say, are sometimes correct. And I think we can learn from each other. So sometimes the Dutch can learn from other countries, for instance Poland, by not pointing their finger all the time, and also listen to each other and maybe find a way to a solution in a dialogue. And I think then in the end,
we did this webinar.
they the same.
Well, I have to humbly disagree on the
Timmermans part, I think.
Well, first and foremost on the press, freedom of the press. I would recommend every country to have such a diversity of views present in the press. Really hardly criticizing political life from left to right and from right to left. But I think if to cut long story short, I think European Union is very, very promising, but it's also our joint responsibility.
Beautiful. Let's end with those words. So we are at the end of our webinar. We will post this later on YouTube. A special thanks to both my guests. Thank you so much. For all the people who joined, thank you so much for your questions as well. See you on our next webinar. That will be about the UK with Tim de Wit and Rem Korteweg of the Clingendael Institute on June 18th. We also started our club Cinema, so check that out as well. Thank you, and thanks again. Bye.